All right, so among the bevy of hot new releases this spring is the next chapter in the Amory Wars saga from Coheed and Cambria. It's called Vaxis III, the father of make-believe. Well, okay, 25 years into the world's longest concept album, are they still as impressive as ever? What new is there really to say? And have they lost a step? Well, my thoughts on all of that and more coming right up. Hey, Prognoggins, Dave here. This is Bleeding Edge. Thank you so much for joining me. Coheed and Cambria, Vaxis III, the father of make-believe, their latest album, continuing the Amory Wars saga that they began, 25 years ago, give or take. Big things going on for Coheed and Cambria at this time. As you may know, as you probably know, the band consists of Claudio Sanchez, lead vocals, guitars, keyboards. He is the primary songwriter and one half of the brains behind the Amory Wars saga, which expands into books and graphic novels and other media. So the music is kind of almost supplemental material, more so than the primary material. In addition to him, there's Travis Stever, other co-founder of the band, lead guitar and vocals. We got Josh Eppard on drums and vocals, and Zach Cooper rounding out the band on bass and vocals. Everybody sings. You don't get a job with Coheed and Cambria unless you are going to be singing. And on top of it, they co-produced the album with Zach Cervini. 14 tracks, 57 and a half minutes, so you got a lot going on there, but you may have noticed Coheed is not one of those proggy bands that goes for the extended long compositions exactly, although, world's longest concept album. Songs are usually brief, concise. They get to the point. That makes them a lot different than your average prog band. They got a lot of ways in which they're a bit different than their average prog band. This, of course, is their 11th studio album. All but one of those are part of this saga. The only one that was not, The Color Before the Sun. I guess they wanted to take a break and do some things outside of the Amory Wars saga. And that's a cool album in and of itself as well. But meanwhile, all the rest are part of this epic sci-fi story. There's I mentioned there's a novella that fleshes out this particular book, or this particular album, this album. See, at a certain point in time, the various forms of media used to communicate and tell this story start to get mixed up even in this head. So, busy guys, and there's a lot going on here. So, let's get to it. That's the notes. Let's get to the breakdown. But before we do that, just a brief reminder, if you could, like and subscribe if you enjoy what I'm doing and enjoy this content. I hope you do. Don't forget, too, to check out the Expanse at some point in time on Live 365 and TuneIn radio apps. Nothing but progressive rock and metal 24/7. That is my little radio station project I got going on there. All right, so the breakdown. Here are the rules. I give every album I review a minimum of 5 listens. I try to do it in various settings and formats, in the car, the headphones, not with the headphones, with the lyrics in front of me, etc., etc. I rate each of them in 4 categories: intellectual, innovation, technical, also called progginess, and emotional. And I get an average score out of that, and I oftentimes will add a what I'm calling at this point a personal enjoyment modifier. I may have to change that term because it's just too wordy. If the objective data, rather, from that score doesn't quite represent what I feel was my personal reaction to the album. So let us get started. We lead off intellectual. So let's be honest. Based on the length of this project and the extent to which it reaches, one has to admire the dedication to such a grandiose vision over the course of 25 years, a quarter century. That's as long as my son has been alive. That is impressive. Just the fact that they can keep this going, that they have that much story to tell and have been doing it for that long, just absolutely is one of those things I find amazing about Coheed and Cambria. Concept albums are one thing, but holy smokes, a concept career it would seem to be the exclusive domain of Coheed and Cambria. I don't know that if anybody else doing that. I can think of some things that maybe are a little bit similar, but what comes to mind first off is like something like Blue Oyster Cult, who had sprinklings of songs throughout their albums over the course of years that were all kind of part of a long story, but they weren't put together really in one album. With the closest that ever came to being was Imaginos. Almost forgot that for a minute. I should write these things down before I just start talking sometimes. But Coheed and Cambria are doing something unique and have been for a long time. The entire series itself is just full of great ideas and impressive concepts, cool characters, and I'm really only, though, going to be looking at this album by itself as you know, as much as is reasonable when you consider the fact that it's part of a larger body of work. But I'm just talking about this album for this time around, so I can't necessarily count all 25 years of work for reviewing one album. But meanwhile, Claudio, as the primary lyricist, has always been really, really creative in terms of turn of phrase and unique ideas and cool phrasings and things like that. He's a really solid writer, and he's got a serious head for singable lyrics and things that go nicely with the epic hooks these guys have in so many of their songs. And he's not afraid to kind of break things up a little bit and take some chances in the way the lyrics are phrased, as far as how they look on the page versus how they are sung in the album. And he does some cool little things here and there throughout the album. He's always been a really solid writer. And I admire that he's been able to do that for so long and be as creative as he has been. Part of me does want to rank this particular section, this category, on the overall concept, but as impressively intellectual as all of that is, I can say that as a lyricist, he's really solid, but I can't say I think he reaches the upper echelon. Just being honest with myself there, I think. But he's right close. He's very close. I don't do fractions in my rankings of 1 to 5. So what I have to say is that gives him a 2. He's damn good. He's really good. He is among the best. And he's not quite up there in that brainy cream of the crop with the Stephen Wilsons and Michael Akerfeldts and Malcolm Galloways of the world, who all achieve a 5. So I feel for my part I need to give him the next best rating, which is a 4, and it is very clearly earned. Moving on to innovation. So the most innovative aspect of this album really began with the original 25-year-old concept and the fact that they've kept it going for this long. That is no small feat. That is not to be underestimated. Just to think about how big that is and the level of dedication just always impresses. And it was impressive 10, 15 years ago, and it just continues to be as they keep putting things together as part of this ongoing story. Meanwhile, they know their trademark sound, and they are absolute masters of it at this point in time. Their blend of proggy, quasi-metal, I almost want to call them metal, but not quite. They are like on that very edge, because they're a blend of things, really. They've got elements of punk. They've got elements of emo. They've got elements of 80s hair metal and nu metal. They've got elements of prog in there. Nobody does what these guys are doing. Nobody sounds like Coheed and Cambria. And honestly, the fact that they have been able to continue to keep themselves sounding fresh and engaging all these years without some sort of major change in their sound. Most bands have evolved outside of their original sounds a good bit at some point in their career, especially more than 2 decades in, 2.5 decades in, and changed up somewhere. Like if you look back and you think, especially the bands that transitioned from the 70s into the 80s and beyond, how significantly they changed in their style and how they played and the kind of songs or sounds they used in their songs and stuff like that. And Coheed has been pretty much a known quantity throughout that time, and yet I still don't feel like it's getting old. They still manage to keep it fresh. There are hooks. That poppy end of things that they get into are always so big and catchy, and the songs grow on you. And At the same time on this album, they are showing they're not afraid to take some less traveled paths, especially musically speaking on this particular collection. Things like the 3.5 minute soft ballad intro dominated by piano and acoustic guitar with Claudio singing really in the lower end of his range. I almost had to check and wonder. I'm like, this is still Claudio, right? Because I've not, to my mind, I can't recall him quite singing that low. He's got a very trademark sound with his voice. So it was very much a change of pace and kind of brave to open an album that is full of such punchy, proggy hard rock with one of the quietest songs on the album. It takes a little bit of bravery, I think, on that part. And then there's the punky, screechy mid-album 1-2 punch of Blindside Sunny and Play the Poet, the kind of stuff that digs a little bit more into the emo side of their influences and brings a side of Claudio's vocals that you don't typically hear. I won't say he's never done something like that, but boy, he really especially digs into it on Blindside Sunny and commits to it throughout as if that is the voice of this character they're introducing, which I believe that is the intent, though I have not confirmed as much. Then there's a sprinkling of strings throughout here and there in the song, and the various songs, like you hear it in the first song, very much in the last song. And speaking of which, that final closer with its Beatlesque tones and instrumentation and lyrical phrasing and content, or maybe not Beatles as much as Beatles by way of Panic at the Disco. I'm thinking, 9 in the Afternoon a little bit there is a little bit of what I think of. So it's a little bit of a callback, it feels like, but it's not something I've heard Coheed do before. And it's nicely an upbeat closer, an album that overall, despite its poppy, punchy, put your fist in the air kind of metal, it is a little dark. It's definitely some dark content in there. Themes about trust and leaving people behind and grief and coping with grief. Coming to the end of life and things like that is not exactly what you would necessarily think on the first listen if you weren't reading the lyrics. And this one is kind of a nice upbeat sound a little bit to it at the end. And then the final 2 minutes of it are basically all symphonic. Like, boom, like it's just sort of hits out of the blue, but it kind of puts a nice exclamation point, I think, on the end of the album, even though it does feel maybe slightly tacked on. I don't mind, because overall their career and this career-spanning concept in these albums are in of themselves grandiose. So it's kind of hard to go, oh, you took it too far with a symphony. Yeah, okay. That's when we went too far? I don't think so. All right, but anyway, none of this stuff, as much as I've enjoyed it, is necessarily what I would call huge departures. We're not talking they redefined their sound or pulled something out of the blue that you've completely never heard them touch upon before. It still fits largely within the trademark Coheed and Cambria sound, but they definitely do add some spice to the album in otherwise well-trodden territory, and I dig that. I appreciate their willingness to spice things up with things they haven't done before. So overall, there's enough of a sense of adventure with this one to definitely let me feel comfortable rating it a 4. All right, moving on to technical. So Coheed is a band I think that has always done an impressive job of making complex arrangements sound simple and accessible and immediate for those jumping on board. This isn't the kind of stuff where a lot of prog can overwhelm a new listener and throw them off and leave them scratching their head. This stuff can grab you as quickly and worm its way into your ear as any pop song out there, really. And that's the thing that's always kind of made Coheed kind of unique among the prog world. And sometimes I think one that people tend to forget does fit comfortably within the prog genre is that the fact that they can be so engaging on the level of pop music. And at the same time, they're really good at keeping simpler arrangements continuing with that wall of sound treatment that you never feel like just because it's simpler, it necessarily isn't hitting as hard as the other stuff unless it's the kind of song that's meant to not hit as hard, like the ballads on the album where they go acoustic and just throw some light piano in there and things like that. They always make it sound really good. And they've always tended to play more with restraint. Instrumental breaks are brief. Solos are solid, but never showy and never overstay their welcome. The emphasis for these guys is really always in service of the song itself, and they really don't go too far outside of what they're trying to do with any particular song. They don't dip into those excesses that prog is often guilty of. I am left to wonder a little bit. I'd really be curious, what could these guys turn out? What kind of product could they make if they ever just cut loose and actually indulged in the full scope of prog excess? Criticism be damned, go full on prog and see what you can do. Do a 20-minute epic song or something like that. That to me would be pretty cool. I'd love to hear that someday. But I doubt we ever are going to, because that's not what they do. That would be Coheed not being Coheed, basically, is what it comes down to. In the end of it all, these guys are really solid musicians, and they know the mission, they know their responsibilities and their accountabilities in every song, each of them. They fully commit to nailing it with military precision, and honestly, in most cases, there's really no need to go beyond what the mandate is. These guys are busy enough keeping up all those intertwining threads of each of the songs and preventing them from becoming knots. That's what they are not interested in doing, at least as far as I understand and perceive the band. The skills are there, and I'd love to see what they could do if they really cut loose someday. Meanwhile, at this point in time, though, I'm going to give them a 4 for this category. And finally, our final category, the emotional content of it. So if you know Coheed, they've always been a band with a lot of passion and a lot of emotion in their music. Our hearts are on their sleeves. Their sleeves are on their hearts. Hearts are on their sleeves. Whether they are expressing that as part of like this grand cinematic epic riffing that comes with some of their hardest songs, or in the always expressive and the powerful vocals of Claudio, who really, I think, does a great job on this album showing off his range a bit and what he can do, and not just in terms of high and low, but the tones and the textures and the qualities that he can bring forth in his voice. He's always had what I consider to be a very unique voice. His cleans are really nice, and he's got a good way of putting just a little bit of vocal fry in them that just gives a little bit of a punch that I've always dug. And honestly, not only does he sound as good as ever in 30 years, after 30 years in the business, but he does. He really does explore his range on this album. It's really cool, and it's impressive to me, among all the other things going on, that he sounds like it's still 2002. I don't know. His voice does not age. Nothing changes. He's there. Maybe it's slightly lower in register. We all do that as we get older, but man, the dude sounds just great at this point in time. So with all of this going on, and with the highs and lows of this album, it's really hard not to get caught up in all of their energy. And you know what? Hey, this old head was banging just a little bit through a lot of it. I couldn't help myself. Got caught up in it. It grabs you. It really does. So they are getting the rare 4 from me on this category. And if you've been following along, you know I am stingy with the 4s on the emotion. So anyway, this time around, I made the math easy for all of us. Nothing but 4s means the average is 4. I don't care what the new math might say. So this time around, it's also worth noting, I have no modifier to add to the raw score. This, I think, nails it exactly for me. My experience of the album was this ranks among the top albums of the year so far for me. And considering the competition, that's a bit of an achievement for Coheed and Cambria. They've really put out a nice, solid album this time around. Matter of fact, probably one of the more solid ones, and that says a lot because these guys are consistent. They are amazingly consistent over all these years. Meanwhile, a few final thoughts. So for me, the highlights would include Continuum 1, Welcome to Forever, Mr. Nobody. That's my top song on the album. But real close behind it, we've got Goodbye Sunshine, and we've got the title track. It's kind of hard to pick them. The only things for me that were maybe weaker tracks were those kind of mid-2 ones. Blindside Sunny and Play the Poet didn't really match the quality of the rest of the songs for me, although they did provide, I think, a nice change in terms of tempo and change of pace in terms of style. They have their coolness to them. They are rockers. They just didn't do it for me as much as the other ones, which admittedly, I guess to an extent, I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to Coheed and Cambria. Like I said, for me, they still sound as fresh as when they first came out. And again, just so impressive for me that Claudio and company have somehow pulled off the rare feat of still sounding as good now and as fresh now as they did when they started. And in some ways even better, because like I said earlier, I think they have mastered their craft. They have mastered their trademark sound. And it's weird. It makes me wonder at times, it's like, did you guys literally actually just record all these albums in the first few years of the century and then just you've been releasing them every couple of years after that? Did you make all of these back before 2005 or something like? I don't know. I don't know how you can keep doing this and still managing to sound so timeless after that length of time. It's truly amazing to me. And this one absolutely grew on me quickly with repeat listens. That's not actually unusual for my relationship with them. A great example is Shoulders from the last album. It didn't honestly grab me immediately when I first heard it, but like every successive listen just made those punchy riffs and that kind of off-kilter beat they had in it just more and more irresistible. In the end, the world agreed with me because that's probably been their biggest hit ever. At least that was certainly huge around this area. The radio station, local one, was playing them all the time. But honestly, guys, I don't know how you're doing it. My hat's off to you. That's impressive how you are so timeless. Meanwhile, if you out there have never seen them live, dude, go see them live. I highly recommend them. They bring all the energy you hear on these albums to full life on the stage. They're absolutely banging. It's amazing stuff. So that's it. Those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours. I'm very curious. We're almost at the end of Q1 of 2025 as the month comes to a close. How does this one rank among the other prog highlights of the year for you so far? What do you think of Coheed and Cambria in general? Like, what's your relationship to them and their body of work over 25 years? I'd really actually, too, from those who have read the books and the graphic novels, I'd like to hear from you folks if you're out there. Like, I'm really curious as to what those are like and how good they are, because, maybe someday I should dig into them. I haven't up to this point, just mostly out of a time thing that I just don't get around to it. And at times I forget that they exist until I'm reminded when a new album comes out. So curious to hear what all of you out there think. Meanwhile, on deck for next time, hey, the latest from neo-prog stalwarts IQ is coming out soon. It's called Dominion. I'm going to be talking about that. So in the meantime, big thank you to everyone for watching. I really appreciate all of you so much for helping this channel grow and become successful. Thank you for being along on the ride for me, with me. I only talk for a living. Anyway, meanwhile, as always, I encourage you to never fear to deviate from the norm. And until next time, keep it proggy.